Welcome back. This will be a very short lesson. We're going to talk briefly about computer animation. And our essential question is, how can I simulate situations using computer animation? We do a lot of computer animation here at Central Dauphin High School. We also do a lot with our TV studio and production. You can do some two-dimensional animation in our digital communications classes, and you can also do some 2D and a good bit of 3D animation in our computer animation class. So let's look at what we're going to do with computer animation. We usually have a very small amount of time to do computer animation in the 9th grade Introduction to Technology Education course, so we do a very brief introduction to it. So, what is computer animation? Where do you see it? Computer animation can be seen just about everywhere these days. You see it in movies, you see it in television, advertising, you see it on the internet, you see it used extensively in computer games, whether they're two-dimensional games on your iPhone or Android phone. You see them also in Xbox games, mostly in the form of 3D animation. In computer games, you see it in architecture. We do a lot of architectural simulations these days. Animation comes in the form of two-dimensional and three-dimensional. Computer animation can be used in industry to simulate how items will respond in real situations. When they design cars today, they're getting to the point where they're getting away from using the crash test dummy to simulate how this car is going to respond in an accident. Because when you design your parts in 3D and you assign material properties to something, you can build that car, put a force on it, and see where things are going to fail. And we actually do a little bit of that in our design and automation class, where we get into some of that robotic stuff. So it's kind of interesting how things are going to these days. You know, in the parentheses I have in there, stress testing materials, simulate car accidents, simulate operation of machines and devices. So we can use computer animation for a lot of stuff these days. So what's the difference? Let's compare 2D animation versus 3D animation. Here are some examples of 2D animation. Two-dimensional animation is flat, like drawing in a sketchbook. Here you'll notice the character. You would draw each thing and show how it's going to move, and if you put these on different pages or in different layers in Adobe Flash and tell it to animate it, it will animate out. And here's an example of Adobe Flash where this guy's arm has pivot points, and you can create what they call keyframes, where you would say the arm would be up here at frame 1, and say at frame 30 the arm would be down here. The computer would simulate everything between those two keys, and you would have about 1 second worth of animation, because in today's television you're looking at about 30 pictures per second. So if you would have that arm move in 30 frames, it would be about 1 second worth of work, and you would export it as a movie. Now, what are we looking at in three-dimensional animation? 3D is a little bit more interesting and a little more difficult to deal with. When you're looking at three-dimensional animation, it requires the creation of 3D objects and scenes. You must set cameras and lighting much like you would in real life. So here's a three-dimensional motorcycle that I modeled in Blender a few years ago. We have a camera set up. We actually have lights displayed in various points to light up the scene. When we hit F12 to render a picture, this is what you get. So we take this motorcycle, we set it on a scene that we make of a city street, a couple of buildings, some lights, and we can animate this thing rolling down a street. Now that sounds a lot easier than it really is. It takes a little bit of work to put it together, but you apply materials, you apply textures to things. Things are going to be reflective. They call that ray tracing. Here's a timeline at the bottom where we actually show our frames, how the movie's going to run. And right here's our thing saying 29.97 frames per second, which would be about 30 frames a second. That would be considered DVD quality video with the way this is set up. And that's really what you're trying to do with 3D. You create these real scenes like you would in real life. You're working on a true three-dimensional model system. So with 3D animation, what do you have to work with? Well, there are some professional programs out there. If you want to drop a few $1,000s and buy them, you can. Maya is a program that you will see used extensively in the advertising industry. If you go to a Hershey Bears or a Senators game and you look at the animation on the Jumbotron, the Hershey Bears use a lot of their animations have been made in Maya. Lightwave is another 3D program that you can buy. If you remember the TV show Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, that was the very first TV show ever created with a piece of software that anybody could go and buy off the shelf, and that was Lightwave. 3D Studio is a program that is used to make a lot of 3D models used in computer games. And of course, Blender is this free version open source program that is really coming into the industry and taken the business by storm. There's a lot of interest in Blender. You're seeing it used more heavily in advertisement. It is being used in some production work in some professional movies. If you ever watch Modern Marvels on the History Channel, most of the animation work you see in there has been made in Blender. Blender is free open source software that can create 3D scenes, animations, and yes, computer games. It can be used for final video editing and combining 3D models with real-life video. So it's pretty much a program that's all in one and can do everything. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with this one. In fact, if you want to learn more about Blender more than we have time in class, I have some links in the class Canvas that will show you some examples of what can be done. I actually have a book that is published on Blender. It's on the school website. It's a free PDF file. You can go in and read the chapters and basically learn the fundamentals of the program by going through that. There are also some other resources at blender.org, and of course YouTube is going to show tons and tons of stuff that people have made. And there you have it. That's the end of it, and we hope you have enjoyed this unit.